Dust boiled off the road in a hot red swirl, the kind that stings a man's eyes and grits his teeth before he knows he's been caught in it. Caleb Harker stood at the fence rail, hat brim low, squinting through the haze as the stagecoach rocked into view. The iron wheels screamed over ruts, the horses lathered with foam, and the driver's whip cracked sharp against the dry air. A crow wheeled overhead. Caleb's jaw clenched. His bride was supposed to be inside. The coach lurched to a halt before the ranch gate, boards creaking as if the thing might splinter under its own weight. Caleb brushed dust from his vest, set his hat straight, and waited for the door to swing open. He had pictured her 100 ways, pale, slight, soft-handed, dressed like a lady. Boots hit the dirt first, heavy boots, caked with travel. Then a shadow filled the doorway, broad against the glare. A woman stepped down slow, skirts sweeping dust, shoulders squared against the sun. Clara Boone. She was taller than any woman Caleb had ever seen, hair pinned tight, face stern as carved stone. The bodice of her dress strained at the seams, not with softness, but with strength. The steps she took onto his land thudded like a hammer. Caleb blinked once, twice. His hand slipped from the rail. The driver tipped his hat. Long haul from Abilene. She didn't fuss none, rode quiet as granite. He flicked the reins and rolled the coach away, leaving the widow in silence with the rancher staring. Her eyes found him, gray, storm-colored, unflinching. She shifted her satchel higher on one shoulder and said nothing. Caleb cleared his throat. "You're Clara Boone." "I am." The voice was deep, steady. No apology, no smile. He dragged his tongue over dry lips. "I was told." "Whatever you were told, I ain't it," she said, and walked straight past him, boots crunching hard over the dirt yard toward the porch. The boards groaned under her weight. The house itself seemed to stiffen, as though testing its own strength against hers. She set her bag down, looked across the horizon. Wind rattled the dry grass. Caleb followed, words clawing his throat, but refusing to come clean. He wanted to demand an explanation. Where was the delicate bride he ordered? But the set of her shoulders made his chest tighten. The screen door whined as she pushed it open. "This'll do," she muttered, stepping inside without waiting for welcome. Caleb's jaw worked. He spat dust and stared at the horizon instead. By nightfall, lantern light spilled from the kitchen window. Caleb sat at the table, fork tapping against his plate. Across from him, Clara ate with a slow, measured calm. She'd rolled up her sleeves, showing arms corded with muscle. She'd mended the kitchen shelf that leaned for years, split kindling clean as a butcher, and cooked beans that tasted better than he expected. Still, his pride gnawed. He set the fork down hard. "You're not what I sent for." Clara looked up. Candlelight shadowed her cheekbones. "You wanted a wife. You got one." "I wanted a certain kind," Caleb pressed. His voice cracked sharp. "Slim. Refined." "Not." Her gaze froze him. "Not what?" His tongue fumbled. The words tangled with the sight of her hand curling around the spoon like a blacksmith's grip. He felt suddenly small, like a boy spitting at a storm. She rose without finishing her meal. The floorboards trembled. "You'll find out soon enough," she said, and left him with the sound of boots climbing the stairs. Days spilled one into the next. The sun burned merciless. Clara woke before dawn, shoulders squared against chores that broke hired hands. She slung feed sacks over her back as if they were flour sacks, drove posts into the earth with the strike of a maul, and calmed a bucking roan in half the time Caleb dared. Men riding past slowed in their saddles to watch her. Whispers stirred in town, the new bride with the strength of a man. Caleb kept his distance, shame thick in his chest. At night, he muttered into whiskey, telling himself she was a mistake, an embarrassment. Yet every dawn he saw her stand in the yard, face lit gold by the rising sun, and the words died in his throat. One evening, thunderheads piled black on the horizon. Caleb sat on the porch, rolling smoke between his fingers, when Clara came from the barn, sweat shining her neck. "Riders been circling," she said. "2 days now. Not locals." Caleb stiffened. "You sure?" Her eyes cut toward the fence line. Dust swirled there, too far to make shape. "I'm sure." He ground the smoke out against the rail. Crowe's men, he muttered. Damn vultures. Clara's mouth tightened. Crowe. Elias Crowe. Gunfighter once. Now he runs the biggest spread east of here. Wants this land for himself. Lightning flared in the clouds. Clara watched it a long while, jaw hard. Then you'll need more than a slim bride, won't you? The wind carried the smell of rain and dust. Caleb shifted in his chair, but no answer came. Night fell heavy. The first drops struck the tin roof like rifle shots. Caleb lay awake, staring at the rafters, listening to the storm. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked beneath Clara's weight, slow and steady. The storyteller's voice would say, that was the night the rancher learned the desert don't always give a man what he wants. Sometimes it gives him what he needs, and it don't ask permission. The storm was only the beginning. The roan bucked once, twice, then pitched hard enough to rattle the corral rails. Clara's hat flew, her braid whipped the air, and still she clung to the saddle, legs locked like iron. Caleb shouted from the fence, "Hold her head! Damn it!" But Clara gave no ear. She pulled the reins sharp, drove her heels, and the horse screamed before dropping to a stiff-legged stop. Dust hung thick. Sweat poured off the animal's neck. Clara swung down slow, boots striking hard dirt, hand running over the roan's lathered flank. She looked at Caleb once, her eyes steady, and then walked the horse toward the trough as though she'd broken a colt every day of her life. The ranch hands muttered low. One spat. Another shook his head. Ain't right, he whispered. Woman out roping us all. Caleb heard them. His stomach twisted. He told himself he should be proud, but the pride that rose belonged to her, not him, and that cut deep. He turned away and caught sight of riders on the far ridge. 3 shadows against the bleeding sunset, sitting their saddles too still, too long. By morning, the fence line was down. Post split, wire cut clean. Clara knelt at the break, fingers brushing the dirt. Crowe's boys, she said. Blade work. Done quick. Caleb squatted beside her, jaw tight. He's pushing. Wants me scared. Are you? Her voice held no mockery, only the weight of a question she expected answered. Caleb stared at the cut wire and felt the heat crawl up his neck. Not yet, he muttered, but his hands trembled when he stood. In town, whispers curled like smoke through the saloon. Caleb sat hunched at a corner table, nursing whiskey, while Elias Crowe leaned at the bar. Broad shoulders, scar tracing one cheek, eyes cold as river stone. His men filled the room with easy laughter, pistols heavy on their hips. Crowe raised his glass. Harker, he called across the din, you're sitting on land that don't rightly belong to you. You ought to take my offer before the winds change. Caleb's throat dried. He glanced at the crowd, faces waiting, silence growing. His pride itched, but his courage faltered. Before he could speak, Clara's shadow cut through the smoke. She pushed the saloon doors wide, boots striking hard, skirts dust-streaked, jaw set. Every head turned. Crowe's smirk faltered. Clara strode to Caleb's side and set her hand firm on his shoulder. This land is his, she said, and mine now, too. Her eyes locked on Crowe's. If you mean to take it, you'll have to cut deeper than wire. Crowe's laugh came low, but the glass in his hand cracked under his squeeze. He said nothing more. That night, rain drummed on the roof. Caleb poured too much whiskey, the glass slipping in his grip. He stared at Clara across the lamplight, her hand steady as she stitched a torn-work shirt. You made me look small today, he slurred. You did that yourself, she answered, thread pulling tight. His temper flared. You broke my bed with your weight. You break my name with your tongue, and still you think you're fit to stand beside me. The needle stilled. She looked up, her face calm as stone. Beds can be rebuilt. Weak men can't carry a ranch through fire. The words struck harder than fists. Caleb's mouth opened, then closed. Shame flooded him hot, and he turned away to the bottle. Upstairs, the storm rattled the windows. Clara climbed the steps without another word. 2 nights later, coyotes yipped wild along the ridge. The lantern on the porch flickered in the wind. Clara stood at the rail, rifle cradled across her arms, eyes scanning the dark. Caleb joined her, stiff-shouldered, the band of his hat pulled low. You see something? Men, she said. Watchin', waitin'. As if on cue, a spark flared in the distance, pipe tobacco glowing red. Then another, farther down the line. Silent watchers. Clara lifted the rifle to her shoulder. They're measuring us. Caleb swallowed. And if they don't like the measure? The steel in her voice cut the night. Then they'll learn we ain't easy to weigh. Morning brought heat like a hammer. Dust devils spun across the pasture. Cattle lowing restless. Clara worked the yard, driving nails into a loose rail, sweat running in rivulets. Caleb watched from the porch, his wounded pride gnawing. But when he looked to the horizon, he saw Crowe's men again, closer this time. Horses dark against the pale grass. He knew the storm wasn't far, and the storyteller's voice would whisper. The rancher's shame was heavy, but heavier still was the shadow crawling across the land. Each day the widow stood taller, while the man who owned the soil beneath her feet grew smaller. But the desert had no care for pride. It only waited, patient for blood to soak its dust. Flames tore through the pasture like a pack of wolves loose from hell. Cattle bawled and stampeded against the fence, eyes rolling white. The sky burned red with smoke, sparks carried on the wind like a storm of fireflies. Caleb stumbled from the porch, rifle in hand, choking on ash. Gunfire cracked from a ridge. A bullet split the post by his head. He dropped to his knees, scrambling for cover. Clara was already in the yard, her dress hem smoldering where sparks clung. She raised the rifle smooth as breath, sighted down the barrel, and dropped her rider clean from the saddle. Another bullet screamed past her ear, close enough to rip her braid loose, but she did not flinch. "Get down, Caleb," she barked. He crawled to the trough, heart hammering, hands slick with sweat. His shots rang wild into the smoke, every trigger pull more desperate than the last. Outlaws hooped and hollered, firing from horseback as they circled the blaze. The cattle broke the fence. Boards cracked, hooves thundered. Dust and smoke swallowed the yard hole. Caleb's shoulder seared as a bullet tore through the flesh, spinning him to the dirt. He cried out, clutching the wound, vision swimming. Clara was at his side in a breath, hauling him behind the water trough with one arm, while her rifle roared with the other. She shot fast, deliberate, every squeeze of the trigger followed by the fall of another man. "You're hit," she said. "It's—" Caleb coughed, blood in his throat. "It's not bad." Her eyes flashed. "It's bad enough. Stay down." Another rider charged, a pistol blazing in each hand. Clara let the rifle drop empty and snatched the axe handle from the woodpile. She stepped into the man's path, swung once, and the crack of bone echoed louder than his shot. He toppled from the saddle, teeth scattering in the dirt. Smoke curled around her shoulders, backlit by firelight. For a moment she looked carved from iron, forged into very flames consuming the field. Caleb stared, half in pain, half in awe. "You fight like," he gasped. "Like someone who's buried enough good men." She cut him off. Her eyes stayed fixed on a ridge. "And I'll be damned before I bury another." The riders regrouped, pulling back from the yard, silhouettes flickering in the haze. Then a whistle cut the night, sharp as a blade. The gunfire stilled. The cattle scattered into the desert, their cries fading. Out of the smoke rode Elias Crowe. His horse stepped slow, deliberate, hooves sinking into scorched earth. Crowe's face was lit orange by the blaze, the scar across his cheek twisted in the firelight. His pistol gleamed in his hand, steady as his cold grin. "You should have taken my offer, Harker," he called. "Would have saved me the trouble." Caleb tried to rise, but the pain dropped him again. Clara stepped forward, axe handle still in her fist, ash streaking her face. Crowe's grin deepened. "Well, I'll be damned. The widow bride. Word in town was you've got more bark than bite." Clara's voice rolled across the fire like thunder. "Come test it." Crowe's men stirred, restless, but he held up a hand. His horse shifted, snorting smoke. "You really mean to stand for him?" Crowe asked. "Man can't even hold his ground. This land'll eat him alive." Clara planted her boots in the dirt. Better a weak man with land than a coward who hides behind hired guns. Crowe's eyes narrowed, grin dying. His pistol lifted slow, deliberate, the barrel gleaming at her chest. Caleb's voice broke in a ragged cry. Clara, but she did not move. The storyteller's whisper would linger here. They thought her flesh meant softness, thought her curves meant weakness. But the truth was writ in her scars, in the fire of her eyes. Every mile of hardship had sharpened her, until there was nothing left but steel. And when Crowe rode down with death in his hands, she was ready to carve her name into the dust forever. The night held its breath. Smoke curled. The fire roared. Clara lifted the rifle from the ground, slid a single shell into the chamber, and leveled it with hands steady as stone. Boot heels scraped against the dust of Main Street. The morning sun rose blood-red, cutting long shadows between the shuttered windows and silent doors. Folks lined the boardwalks, hats low, whispers caught in their throats. Not a bird sang, not a horse snorted. The town itself seemed to hold its breath. Clara Boone stood in the center of the road, her skirts heavy with soot, her hair loose around her shoulders. Her rifle hung easy in her grip, eyes fixed forward. Across from her, Elias Crowe rolled his shoulders, pistol already dangling at his side. The scar on his cheek gleamed in the hard light, his smirk curling like smoke. Behind him, his men shifted restlessly, but none dared move closer. "Step aside, widow," Crowe called, his voice carrying sharp and clear. "This quarrel ain't yours." Clara's boots rooted into the dust. Her voice rang deeper than bells. "It is now." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Caleb Harker leaned weakly against the hitch rail, his bandaged shoulder bleeding fresh. His mouth opened, but no sound came. He could only watch. Crowe twirled his pistol once, deliberate, mocking. "You aim to shame me in front of my men, woman? I've killed quicker hands than yours before you learned to ride side saddle." Clara lifted the rifle, slow, steady. Her finger brushed the trigger, her eyes unblinking. "Then kill me," she said. The street stilled. Crowe's grin died. His pistol rose. Sunlight flashed off steel. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hang suspended, dust swirling in golden spirals between them. Crowe fired first. The shot tore the silence apart, wood splintering on the storefront behind Clara. She'd moved before the smoke cleared, rifle shouldered, barrel leveled. Her shot cracked louder, sharper, cutting through the air like judgment itself. Crowe staggered, his smirk breaking into shock. The pistol slipped from his fingers, clattered against stone. He dropped to his knees, clutching his chest where crimson bloomed across his vest. The crowd gasped as one. Clara lowered the rifle, smoke curling from the barrel. Her breath came slow, even. Her eyes never left Crowe as he collapsed face first into the dust, his blood soaking into the thirsty earth. The silence afterward was heavier than gunfire. Crowe's men shifted, hands twitching near their holsters. Clara turned to them, her voice flat as iron. "Any of you mean to stand in his place?" None moved. Not a soul spoke. One by one, they backed their horses, reined away, and vanished down the road without firing a shot. The townsfolk stirred, whispers breaking into shouts. Some swore they saw lightning split the sky at the moment her rifle spoke. Others said the desert wind itself carried her name. Caleb staggered forward, hand pressed to his shoulder, eyes wide. "Clara," his voice cracked, choked with shame and awe both. "You saved it all. The ranch me." She looked at him, steady and unreadable. Then she bent, took his arm, and lifted him to his feet as though he weighed no more than a boy. "Stand up, Caleb," she said. "Your land's still yours. Don't waste it." Her strength steadied him, but he felt smaller beside her than ever before. The old storyteller's voice would linger long after. They tell it was the widow's bullet that ended Crowe's reign, but more than that, it was her spine that shamed a town into remembering what courage looked like. Some said she was too big, too rough, too much for the rancher who sent for her. But the desert don't measure worth in waistlines. It measures it in fire, in iron, and in blood spilled on dust. So when the wind howls low across Harker's land, they say you can hear the echo still. The curvy bride who crushed not just a bed, but the outlaw who thought he owned the frontier. Clara Boone, the iron spine of the plains. Her name carried like thunder. Her story bent the air itself, and no man ever forgot it. The town exhaled at last. Boots shuffled, hats tipped, and under the rising sun, the widow bride stood tall, legend already woven in the dust at her feet.